LinkedIn, we are going to fire up your Monday.
With Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
I am Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
Over the next hour of this Master Connection series, we will take a deep dive into the different ways to connect and network effectively.
See us and hear us right now. So LinkedIn, we are on here. We're getting ready.
Hear from experts along with Steve Spiro, who went from being shy and introverted to the Master Connector.
All right, LinkedIn, you know what time it is. This is the Master Connection Series show. I am coming to you live, and I want you to hit those clappy emojis, the insight. I want you to go crazy with those buttons and let us know where you are viewing from. It's really important for us to hear every week where you're viewing from. We love hearing it. Even if we've heard before, we love knowing where your viewing is. Our guests love to hear it. We're excited to hear it from you. So here we go. We're getting into it, and we're talking about servant leadership today. Servant leadership, your company's growth, your success, question mark, right? Is that the same thing? We're going to get into it. I'm going to introduce my main man, Steve Spiro here, and then we are introducing Dan Horwich and Oakland McCulloch and Kris Macc. We're going to get into the show here with my main man, Steve Spiro. Steve Spiro, finishing up the lunch there. Steve Spiro is a martial arts black belt and a master network. He has moved from being a shy, introverted kid to the master connector he is today. Steve Spiro began his business career by starting an advertising company in NYC. He had an incredibly fulfilling career and experience in advertising and marketing, but eventually pivoted to the technology industry. Today, Steve is a business automation consultant with Quadient, where he helps companies streamline and automate how they communicate and connect with their customers, leveraging artificial intelligence with both hardware and software. Steve Spiro believes in the power of mentorship, growing oneself through self-development and continuing to create meaningful connections through building a large network. Welcome to the stage, the Master Connector himself, Mr. Steve Spiro.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everything you do. Cameron Toth, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. I'm my partner in crime here. So, hey, folks, it's Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. Cameron and I really appreciate you tuning in. We're here every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We come at you with engaging content on how you, too, can be a Master Connector. During this Master Connection series, each week our goal is to gather subject matter experts to impart their wisdom on us. Welcome to the show. Very blessed to have my co-host here, Cameron Toth. Cameron is the host and founder of Biz Dev Live. Cameron founded Toth Event Staffing in 2011. Toth Event Staffing is a hospitality company providing staff to caterers, cafeterias, and catering departments in Westchester, New York, and New York City. Biz Dev Live was founded in 2020 and is a weekly show that airs on multiple platforms, including right here on LinkedIn Live, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Biz Dev Live takes Cameron's entrepreneurship experience and combines it with his passion for helping people, young people in particular, and business-minded professionals. Cameron's Toth's mission in life is increasing access to education and opportunity for all people. So please bring back to the stage my man, my partner in crime, Mr. Cameron Toth.
Thank you for that, Steve. Just want to shout out. We got Mama Spiro checking in from Poughkeepsie. Please, guys, let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love hearing it. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Where are you? Post in the chat. We want to get to it. We want your comments. We want your questions. Hit those emojis. We love hearing from you. I'm going to jump right into our participants today, our expert panel, Mr. Dan Horwich. Man, a few words here. He posted this crazy small bio for me, but we're going to work it. Pay It Forward networker, owner of second generation IT conference organization. Over 50,000 individuals have attended their IT conferences. This is Mr. Dan Horwich. Please welcome to the show, the dangerous Dan Horwich. So, Dan, just say hello to everybody real quickly for us here.
Hello, everyone. Grateful to be here. Thrilled to be participating and looking forward to sharing insights and helping folks move ahead in their careers. Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to head over to Kris Macc here, flying on over here. Kris Maccarola is the Director of Client Services at the Achieve Institute. As a key member of the Achieve team, Kris is responsible for business development initiatives, working closely with leaders from top organizations to identify ways in which the Achieve Institute can support their organization's needs. She is also a part of the client delivery team, bringing her experience in training and development to client engagements. Kris brings 20 years of sales training and leadership experience working with Fortune 100 companies. After leaving corporate America, Kris owned a leadership development and emotional intelligence consulting firm. She worked with large organizations to create a culture where employees felt energized, enabled, and engaged. In doing that work, Kris recognized a pervasive challenge among organizations. Blind spots existed, and they negatively impacted the health of the organization, affecting both culture and strategy until she learned about the Achieve Institute. She believed there were only partial solutions to these challenges. Kris quickly recognized that the Achieve system was the comprehensive solution that her clients sought. Kris enjoys public speaking. Digital Businesswoman magazine and the Fox TV affiliate in Tampa, Florida both feature her. Kris recently published her book, No Approval Needed. In her spare time, she enjoys traveling with her family and practicing yoga. Kris holds an education specialist degree in Master Arts in School Psychology from the University of South Florida. Welcome to the show, the critically courageous Miss Kris Macc.
Thank you so much for having me. This topic is near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. So thank you.
Love it. Love it. And I'm just going to shout out really quickly. Val Torres checking in. Couldn't miss this. Love when Steve serves those nuggets of wisdom. Keep making the world a better place. So we want to hear from you. Post in the chat. Let us know where you're viewing from. We love your comments. We love your questions. Flying over to Mr. Oakland McCulloch, Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch. Oakland McCulloch was born in Loudoun, Tennessee, and raised in Kirkland, Illinois. We were talking a little bit about that before we jumped on the show here. After graduating from high school, he attended the United States Military Academy at West Point for 2 years, then graduated from the Northern Illinois University and received his commission as an infantry officer through the Reserve Office Training Course in 1986. Lieutenant McCulloch retired from the Army in September 2009 with over 23 years of active service and joined the staff at the Bay Area Food Bank as the Associate Director. He was also the Vice Chair for Military Affairs at the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Mobile Rotary International Club. Lieutenant McCulloch left the food bank in December 2010 to become the Senior Military Science Instructor and Recruiter for the Army ROTC program at Stetson University in Dayton, Florida. In his 9 years at Stetson, the program grew from 15 cadets to over 100 cadets. In October 2013, he became the Recruiting Operations Officer for the Eagle Battalion Army ROTC program at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where he has more than doubled the size of the program in 6 years. Cadet Commander selected Lieutenant Colonel McCulloch as the top recruiting officer out of 274 recruiters for 2019. Lieutenant Colonel Oak McCulloch published his first book in February 2021, Your Leadership Legacy, Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. Lieutenant Colonel McCulloch earned a Bachelor of Science degree in History from Northern Illinois University in 1987 and a Master in Military Arts and Science and History from the United States Army Command and General Staff College in 2002. He received 31 military service awards, including the Bronze Star, 8 Meritorious Service Medals, and the Humanitarian Service Medal. And I'll officially say this. Thank you for your service, sir. Please welcome to the state, the officially not ordinary Oakland. Go on. Let's get to it. Say hello to everybody, Oak.
This is a subject that is absolutely my passion now in life, is to talk to as many young men and women as I can about leadership. So appreciate you having me on the show.
We share that passion for offering opportunity and education to young people, and especially I love that. All right, so we're going to jump into this show here. We got a few questions that we want to dive into. What does servant leadership mean to you? Steve, get us started off, and then if you would, my expert panel here, just jump into the private chat and let me know who wants to go next. Looking forward to hearing from everybody in the chat. Please let us know where you're tuning in from and where you stand on this whole servant leadership. Are your leaders servant leaders, or are they something else? We want to hear about it. Go ahead, Steve.
Absolutely. And number one, I'm very grateful to have everyone on the show, but I just want to point out I have a a heart for the men and women that serve our country. So thank you officially, Lieutenant Commander Oakland, for being on the show with us. It's an honor to have you on there, sir, as well as all the other amazing panelists as well. But I wanted to point out my, a heart for that. Yeah, servant leadership, right? And I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's perspective, not just obviously someone like Oakland who's served, but we all serve, right? There's many different ways that we serve. And, I've come from, I'm a little older than probably the average person viewing the show, except for my mom, obviously, who's on. There's an older model, right? The model was the management model, and you manage people that you work with, and I loved when I started getting around some very successful people that were entrepreneurs, and started to work with them and be associated and team up with them, and saw how they really served the people around them, right? Not just serving their customers or their clients, but also serving the people that worked with them. And again, work with them, not for them, right? It's not a matter of my perspective of servant leadership is how could you help the person, empower that person, not necessarily what can you do to push that person, right? When you serve, eventually people want to be a part, they want to rise to the occasion. When you manage, people are just being compliant, they're doing things they have to do. And I believe the true inspiration is when you really could do servant leadership. And by the way, one of my favorite authors in the entire world is John Maxwell. You probably heard me talk about it. He talks about, how do you spell leadership? EXAMPLE is example, right? So the best way you could serve is just being a good example. And it doesn't just happen. He talks about you could lead up, you could lead down, you could lead horizontally, right? So you always set an example, but the best way I found in life is to serve. You serve the masses, you'll live with the classes, right? You just want to serve people, and hopefully nobody takes that wrong. Just serve people, and you will have the kind of fulfilling lifestyle that you want, not just monetarily, but also in terms of fulfillment, in terms of personal stuff. So I have incredible panelists on. I want to hear what everyone else has to say. I'll pass it back to you to go to the next speaker.
Absolutely. Oak wants to jump in here. Go ahead, Oak.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So I always tell people, it's kind of like this dichotomy. I always say it's not about you and it's all about you. That's what servant leadership is to me. It's not about you in what privileges you have or what title you get. And I tell people, we don't make you the leader so that you get more money or to live in a nicer house or get to drive a nicer car. Sometimes that stuff happens and that's great, but that's not why we made you the leader. We made you the leader for all the reasons that it's all about you and how you treat the people in your organization, how you take care of them. And that it really does come down to that. And, when we commission our brand new second lieutenants, officers going out into the United States Army to serve this great country of ours, and some of them companies out there, because some of them go in the National Guard or Reserve, I always tell them this the day they get commissioned. I said, enjoy today, because today is all about you. Congratulations, you just got your commission. That's a big achievement. I said, but after we pin those bars on your shoulder, and tomorrow morning when you wake up, it will never be about you ever again. It's going to be about the people who work for you. It's about your organization. It's about the Army. It's about the mission that we're going to give you. It's about the country that you're serving. And then if we have some time, we might talk about you, maybe. So that's what it's all about to me. I really am passionate about that.
Love that. Going over to Kris here. Go ahead.
I think it's such a great question, and I love everything that Oakland just said. And it really is about being in service of others, and the key word there is being. At the Achieve Institute and the work that we do with people, it's getting leaders to recognize who are you being, which is so important. Leadership is not a doing; it's actually a being. Because if you want to empower others and you want to enable them and help them be energized to do their best work and be their best possible selves, has to start with you. We always say, clean up your house first, then you can clean up the neighborhood. So who are you being? And being really clear on it's about being in service to others.
I love that. I love that. And always starting with your own backyard before you start. I think that's a good leadership advice for anybody, right? Stop before you start criticizing somebody else's stuff. Make sure your own stuff is in good shape. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry, we got you on mute. Hold on one second. You have to pull off. Yep.
No, I'm thrilled to be here. So from my perspective, we learned about this sort of earlier in life. And about 83 years ago, my grandfather was rescued from the Holocaust through the kindness of a stranger. And so that really motivates me to go forward and say, anyone I come into contact with, how do we make the day a better day for them? How do we connect them? Understanding that folks, through their own livelihood or through their upbringing, there may be triggers. So when someone responds to us in a certain way, we always have to step back and say, there are probably a few different things that are controlling how they are, and we have to react appropriately. So it's about enabling others. It's about understanding that folks have those triggers, that their challenges they're facing. And if we serve them with kindness, with empathy, then we end up building relationships and helping move the needle forward for others.
Hey, Cameron, can I jump in for a second?
Please.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what Steve said and everybody else. It really is about example. I think that's part of the things that we forget, that those of us who believe in servant leadership, we kind of forget that because we do it all the time. But those who aren't or don't practice servant leadership, they kind of forget that it really is about the example they set. I tell people, look, you are the leader 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You do not get to take a vacation from being the leader. Does that mean you don't get to go on vacation? Absolutely not. We all know that's not the case, but you're still the leader, and you got to set that example. And every time you do something, just like Steve was saying, you either raise the standard or you lower the standard. And every once in a while you'll keep the standard the same, but most of the time you either raise or lower the standard. And so you got to make sure that you are always setting the example for the people who are working with you and for you, because that's what it's all about. It really is.
Cameron, I'm gonna jump in and thank you for the call out, Oak, on that, and I appreciate your perspective 100%. I just want to go back to what Dan had talked about, and if you haven't had a chance to meet with or speak to Dan, you need to, and all the panelists, but Dan in particular, having a story about his grandfather in the Holocaust and just that crazy. But he mentioned something about, and he may not exactly use these words, but having empathy and walking in someone's shoes. And I'm reading the book for the first time, believe it or not, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in Stephen Covey, right? And he, in the book, he tells a story about, there's a man is, the person telling this story is on a subway train. It's a kind of a quiet subway car, not a lot going on. And all of a sudden, this man with 2 kids walks in, and the 2 kids are creating havoc. They're all over the place. They're jumping on stuff. They're making noise. And the man is just sitting there kind of quietly looking down, almost oblivious to what the havoc that the kids are creating. And, the man that's telling the story couldn't help, after a while, he just couldn't help himself. He said, "Sir, do you see what your kids are doing? And he's obviously annoyed. And the young man, the man that was, had his head down, looked up and in a very kind of distraught way say, "Yeah, I understand. I just don't, just an hour ago, we came from the hospital. My wife, their mother just died." And it just completely changed the his perspective, right? Here he was thinking that this guy just didn't care. Kids were, but what, if you lived in their life, right? I like to look at it. If I walked in their shoes their whole entire life, would I be different? Probably not, right? So when you are leading and you're talking to people, try to be empathetic and understand that not everybody, we're not all robots. We're not all automatons, right? We all have personalities, life's experiences, but try to lead with empathy and always look at yourself first, which is back to what Oakland said, looking at yourself first. Can I be better? And that through that example, hopefully that'll inspire them to be better as well, versus being critical and saying, "Oh man, that person should do this or that person should do that." So that's why I just want to throw in.
I love that. And as a leader, with my company, and I work with a lot of folks, and I know Dan wants to jump in, so I'll say this and let him go. But if you're a manager, and I'd love to hear from folks if they have different managers, they're in situations where they have folks over them and they're not in that ideal situation. I mean, that's what we're talking about today. How to improve your situation if you're working with somebody, if you are a leader, how to actually be a servant leader. Because there's a lot of different places where people kind of weigh in on this whole management, leadership kind of piece. And I'm particularly, I think it's going to be interesting as we get deeper into the conversation. The military is a place where, you have to sort of follow orders, right? And so there's a place for that, and there's a real good reason for that. And I've always said to people, my job or a captain's job working the events, because we're in the event industry, and that becomes like a military operation right there when you have things that have to be done on a strict timeline in order to serve a lot of people, right? And so my job as a manager is not to boss people around, it's to provide the tools and the resources for people to get the job done. And you have to realize that I don't, these folks that I have on my team, they don't work for me, I work for them. I am there to provide them the resources and tools so they can get the job done. It's my job to provide for them, not the other way around. Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about this in terms of his management experience and management advice, and I really, really appreciate that. You don't work for you. Your employees don't work for you. You work for them. And when you get that through your head as a manager and as an owner and a founder, CEO, that is a big, 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 big deal, because that way you can then really support your team so that they can really support the growth of your company. I know Dan wants to jump in. Go ahead, Dan.
And Steve, thank you for sharing that on Stephen Covey, because that's an example I remember clearly about the gentleman on the train with his kids, and that really resonated with me. But I want to go back also to what I was talking about, triggers with folks, and also reading the room. I find that with a lot of folks, like even at my conference, I tell my sponsors that there are 5 things the attendees are thinking about when they're coming to an event, and it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with maybe the disagreement they had with their spouse, maybe getting their kids into college and paying for it, when they can retire, when they can vacation, sadly, maybe no relative. So it's about understanding that folks can be complicated. And when you're in a situation, reading the room and removing emotion, I know that's sort of challenging for some individuals. But what I found is 99% of the time, if someone comes at you with either negativity or hostility or disappointment, a lot of times most of the time I should say, it has nothing to do with the person receiving it. It's the one who's delivering it, because they have certain triggers. And what I found to really diffuse the situation is understanding, well, there's certain things that are sort of pulling or pushing that person. And if we respond with kindness, we respond with empathy, and we put ourselves maybe in a third person, just viewing this, watching this, and sort of what I call reading the room and understanding that there may be these triggers there, that can really diffuse the situation, and it can help individuals collaborate more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree, Dan. Great. Kris, I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
I did. You all have mentioned the word empathy a number of times, and it's such a powerful, powerful skill. The problem with it is it's really hard to display consistently. And Steve, I know you mentioned The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's one of my favorite books by Stephen Covey. And I believe it's in that book where there are 3 questions that he poses that I think can help us all tap into empathy, even when it's difficult to access. And the first one is, what if I knew only what they knew? The second one is, what if I had experienced only what they had experienced? And the third one is, how would that change my perspective? When we can ask those questions, it allows us to put our agenda on the back burner so that we can truly seek to understand, because that's what empathy is about, especially when we disagree with somebody or our brain is perceiving bad behavior from that person. It's really difficult as a leader to be empathetic, to access that skill. So if we can ask ourselves those 3 questions and really seek the answers, that's going to help us to build that bridge of that common understanding. So I just wanted to add to that, because I thought those questions were really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great book. Absolutely great book. I don't know if somebody else wants to jump in. Oh, Mom Spiro is asking, who coined servant leadership? Anybody know that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I'd like to jump in on something you talked about, Cameron.
Please.
Yeah. So you were talking about, you work for the people who you work for the people. They don't work for you. And I believe that. And I had a boss one time who retired a 4-star general. So obviously way smarter than me. And he said, "Oh, you have to get to the point, when you're a servant leader, this is kind of where it comes from, in my opinion, and where he believed it was. And it comes back to what you're saying, that you work for the people." And he said, when on a scale of leadership, you've got on one end, you got the micromanager, the person who tells you not only what to do, but when to do it, how to do it. He said, horrible. You want to be as far away from that as you can. On the other side of the scale, completely opposite, you have that as you get as close to chaos as you can get, the Attila the Hun, where you just let things go. And he said, you want to be as close to that as you can be. And the way you get there is that you give away your authority. You tell people what you need them to do. And then you give them the resources, the time, the people, the money, whatever resource they need. And you give them the authority to do it. Now, you can't ever give away responsibility. Your name is always on the blame line as the leader. You are always responsible for what your organization does or does not do, but you can give away your authority. And the more authority you give away, the closer you get to that chaos, and you let the people who actually are down there on the ground make the decisions. And that, to me, is huge. And that's when your organization will become much more effective and much more efficient.
I love that. And we got two questions that I want to jump into here. One is how have you seen servant leadership impact you professionally or personally? So I'm looking forward to some of these stories. And the next question, which people might want to start tying into right away, when looking to work with someone, what are some clues that you can look out for that they are a servant leader? So we might start sort of winding some of those into both of those questions, right? How have you seen servant leadership impact you professionally or personally? And then giving people, right, this skill set, because I think it's a skill set that you need to develop. You're looking for a new position or a new project. You want to look for people that are servant leaders to work with. Why? Because we've been talking about it, right? It's people that understand. And so by providing those tools, those resources, by being a go-giver, right? We've talked a lot about being a go-giver on this show. You set yourself up for that much more success, right? If you're giving, not in a way where you're not receiving, being open, and going back to Bob Burke's book, I love that, being open to receiving. So open to receiving the benefits of people working with you and providing those benefits. But when you're giving, people are going to give back to you, right? So how have you seen servant leadership impact you professionally or personally? And when looking to work with someone, what are some clues that you can look out for that they are a servant leader? So Steve, why don't you jump in on this, and then I'll start jumping into everybody else. Go ahead, Steve.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's great. And great questions, great feedback so far. And it's interesting. This conversation can be very sort of mechanical and very, I don't know, non-emotional, but I feel like we're hitting the heart, which I'm really happy about. So, for me, I'll give a couple examples, right? I've got a gentleman in my life that has been a mentor to me, a really close friend. And I probably referenced him a lot on, whether in broadcast or on my videos, but he's just served. He's served and served and served. He's helped me as a mentor. He's helped me in business. He's helped me way more amount than I could ever even put words to. And what has that created? Well, number one, he set an example for what I should be doing and how I should pay it forward. But also he created probably the most loyal guy that he could find, because he served me so much. I want to be loyal. There's nothing that will stop me from wanting to do whatever I have to do. I would take a bullet for the man. I really would. So that's number one. I happen to be working with a gentleman with what I do with Quadient, and similarly, I wouldn't say he's been a mentor sort of in the life side of things like this other gentleman I'm mentioning, but this gentleman, I'll throw his name out. It's Emil, Emil. I'll just use his first name, but he's been a great resource. And having somebody that's got your back, that really wants to help you, it's just been tremendous. And it takes it number one, it takes the burden off of you. And number two, it allows you to be able to really, do what you got to do, right? If you're in the business world and you're encumbered, you're kind of bogged down by stuff. He's been a great resource for me to and just goes the extra mile to help me. So those are some examples, both personally and professionally, how it's helped me. And listen, it's looking for clues. I think it's a little hard. Maybe you could ask questions. What's your philosophy on management and leadership, and see how they take that answer. I would do that. I would have an opportunity, if you have the chance, to talk to people they associate with, or if you're looking to take a job and this could be your manager, if you will, perhaps you request to see if you could meet with some of that person's direct reports, right? So those are some clues that I have. But I like asking questions and getting a feel. You could even ask them, hey, what are some of the books on leadership that you've read? Maybe, and see what they say, right? So just asking questions, I think, starts to open up you to the kind of person that they could be, and have a better understanding of what they're about as well. So I'll pass it back to you, Cam.
I'm thinking about certain leaders that are not known not to be readers, and by asking that question, you might find out right away that this is somebody that you might not want to be working with. I think that's a great question. I love that. Kris, I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like Steve, have been very fortunate being able to work with a number of great servant leaders, and really being able to notice those things. Sometimes it's the little things that they do, and sometimes it's big things. But for me, if we're thinking about things that clue me into whether somebody is a servant leader or not, it's, are they side by side with their team members? Are they somebody who's confident enough to not be the smartest person in the room all the time? Really leaning into leveraging the strengths of the team, saying, hey, I don't have all the answers. What do you all think? I think that's super important. Also, somebody who makes it psychologically safe to fail, because without failure, you will not have innovation. And so we're saying, hey, let's talk about our best failures. What did we learn from this without blame? I think that's somebody who shows that they're in the trenches. They don't need all the recognition. They don't need to be the person that has all the answers, but really leaning into the team and bringing the best out of the team, empowering them to be some people who are able to be resilient, come up with the answers, create those solutions, and do it in a way that, again, is psychologically safe. I think is so important.
Kris, I wanted to just add in for that big point, entrepreneurship especially, but in all these different companies, and study after study and report after report is talking about, let your team have some creative freedom, let them do some different things. Oak was talking about it before in terms of, giving the accountability, letting people kind of have some accountability, get the job done themselves. But this idea of being able to fail and supporting folks through failure, because so many pieces of innovation, so many good things come out of the experience of doing something, not getting it right, and being supported right on to the next step. Not supporting a culture of failure, but the individual is able to do their job, fall in their place, and still be supported and get back up and do it right. I don't know if I'm saying that the right way.
Yeah, I think you're right on there. And I think that's also something that we want to be careful with as servant leaders. So to bring kind of, a spotlight on there could be a danger to it if we overdo it. If we always save the day and we don't allow people to make a mistake and learn from it, we are robbing them of a growth opportunity, of the opportunity to become resourceful and build resilience and confidence. And that only comes through adversity of being able to make a mistake. And to be, obviously we want to learn from those very quickly so that we don't repeat them. But there has to be that ability to do that if you want people to be empowered to learn, to grow, to innovate, et cetera.
And just as a follow up there, how do we find, if you're looking for that place, you're out in the world, and whether you're an employee that's looking for a spot where you have that sort of place where that you're going to be able to learn aggressively, right? So that's what I think failure is about, right? Learning aggressively, right? You're in a place where, I think about my children, and I hate bringing my children into discussions on leadership, but time and time again, I see the correlation between stuff that I do in my company and raising my children. The idea that, all right, I want you to go and do this. And I may know that it's not going to work out well, or at least I have a good idea, but I know that they're going to learn tremendous amounts from the effort of putting it forth. How do you find that situation where you're going to have leadership to do that? And as entrepreneurs, how do we find clients that are going to allow us to be creative and maybe, fall on our face? Because I know they exist, right? Those relationships do exist.
Yeah.
So how do we find that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple telltale signs. Are people comfortable speaking up? Is it a culture where people are afraid to speak up? That to me tells me that that's not a culture that's supporting empowering people. Do we talk about our best failures? Is it an open conversation where we say, yeah, this happened, we own it, we learn from it, and we do it without blame? To me, those are two things that I always look for in healthy teams, healthy organizations, where they want to innovate and they realize that that's necessary for innovation. You can't have groupthink, you can't have people being afraid to speak up, and you can't have people afraid to fail, because then they will play it so safe, you're never going to get the growth you're looking for in your business.
Love that.
No, I always, let me jump in for the real quick, because I always tell people, look, I don't care if you make a mistake. Everybody's going to make a mistake. I had a boss one day said, Oak, if you didn't make a mistake today, you probably didn't do anything. So what he cared about and what I care about as a leader is, if you make a mistake, that's fine. Then own up to it. Come up to me. I care about what you do after you make the mistake. Come up to me and say, hey, boss, I made a mistake today, and this is how we're going to fix it. I'm going to say, good, let's do it. If you make a mistake and you try to sweep it under the rug or you blame somebody else, now we got a problem. But if you own up to it, then absolutely, hey, and we're all going to make mistakes. There's no perfect people in this world. Although I keep telling my wife that I am, she's not buying it. But
okay, I want to mention a couple of things, because I think this is really good subject matter for us, because so much of somebody's character is revealed after there's an error made, and I'm following up with that person and saying, hey, what happened, and how the response is, right? We talk about the fortune is in the follow-up, right? All right, we had this great conversation. What are you doing afterwards? So much, I feel, of life and relationships is not the moment, right? Whatever transpired in the moment, it's what happens after. I thought that was a great point. I also want to highlight, we got this question to the audience. How do you feel about having a manager over you? And Val, we want to hear all your answers. If you're watching now, please, we want to hear your answers. And if you're watching this on the replay, #replay, we want your answers. Having a manager, Val says, having a manager over me has never worked well for me. And that's why I became an independent business owner. I feel like servant leaders don't mesh well with other types of leaders, especially the authoritarian, laissez-faire, or autocratic. It quickly becomes a toxic work environment when our priorities are the people and other managers' priorities are the profits. That's, I think there's a lot going on there, but I'd love us to talk about this thing, right? You can have a good leader inside of an organization, but if the rest of the organization isn't on that same page of being servant leader, you are going to run into some really big challenges.
So, Cameron, I think one of the things that you asked the question, how do you determine if somebody is or not? And one of the things, and I do a lot of interviews for the ROTC program. And one of the things I always ask is, out of all the things that you think a leader is responsible for, what do you think the number one thing is? And I'll tell you, sometimes you can quickly red flags. Somebody gives an answer and a red flag goes up, because that's not about servant leadership, and it's not the type of leadership you want. If they're talking about taking care of people and doing things for people and accomplishing the mission with people, them accomplishing the mission, now we're on the right track. But when I get people who don't talk in those terms, that red flag starts to flap in my mind.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it was mentioned before, we were talking about something along the lines of, when things go well, you did a great job. When things go bad, and me as the leader, it's my responsibility. Absolutely. It's my accountability. My name's on the ticket, right? I take the fall for it. That's, I think, a big part of being a servant leader. So if you're asking those questions immediately and somebody's saying all the victories are mine instead of the victories are the team. Great indicator, right? The red flag should be going up if it's me versus the team getting highlighted with the accomplishments. Dan, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yes, I think that, and I love both the comments that both Kris and Oak made, because what I've seen, it's in how I coach friends of mine who are looking for new roles, is don't look at the compensation first. Look at the culture of the company first. Because if the culture of the company is about enablement, is about supporting, is about team building, innovating, that's positive. If the culture of the company is purely money driven, and granted, the byproduct of doing all these great things is being financially rewarded. But if the whole focus is just the bottom line, money, you're going to be in the wrong culture, because that's where it can very clearly go off the rails and become very toxic. If it is about enabling and there's a very focused mission and everyone's in line with that mission, then theoretically you can sidestep a lot of that negativity. Now, in larger, more bureaucratic organizations, you will find pockets of politics and that negativity. But I always try and share with everyone that focus on the culture first, and the culture comes from the top. One of my favorite corporate leaders right now is Bill McDermott, the CEO of ServiceNow, where he, even in his book Winner's Dream, talks about culture, talks about empathy, talks about how you really have to have a mission and have everyone else buy into the mission. And really the joy comes from achieving that mission, but the financial rewards are the byproducts of a job well done.
I love that. Yeah, I think that so much, right? If I mean, in Oak I know Oak mentioned it before, right? The idea that things will come to you. If you put good out, good's going to come back to you. And if you got a leader that's not about that, it's a situation to run away from, right? Kris, I know you wanted to talk about this, this idea that if you're noticing that you're maybe in a good relationship in your department of the company, but the larger culture doesn't support it, how do you deal with that? Talk to us here.
Yeah, I think Dan just made a really good point about, culture starting at the top, and really does need to be very intentional. Having said that, we don't always all have the luxury of saying, I'm going to leave this company because I don't like the culture, right? So in some of the work that we do at the Achieve Institute is getting people to understand that you can be an environment/culture generator. So what does this culture look like when it's working right? And helping them really get underneath that. And again, you own who you're being. Being a servant leader, I said at the beginning of the show, is all about who you are being. What is your being plan? What is the type of culture you want to generate? And really empowering people to do that, because if we're waiting for it to come from the top, that may not happen. And if we're choosing to stay, then we have to be accountable for how we can be the best servant leader in difficult circumstances, in a culture that's challenging. So who are you being? What is the type of culture you want to generate? And being really clear about that, of that power of one. It has to start with you.
Yeah, Kris, that's great. And I always tell people that, culture doesn't just happen. Well, it does, but it's not the culture that you generally want. If you want a certain type of culture, you have to develop it. And the way you develop it is through training, through communication, through involvement of the people that you want. And they have to know where you want that company to go, that organization to go. If they know those kinds of things, then you can develop that culture. That's a great comment that you made there. I really appreciate that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this idea of the wider culture within companies, and how do you actually make sure that the culture is the culture that you want, starts always with you. And so it's so appropriate. Our next question: what are some ways that our viewers today and the folks in general can step up and be more effective leaders? Because this is the thing. You can't change anybody but yourself. So how do we affect the change that we want to see, knowing that we can't change anybody except ourselves? How do we actually create that change that we want to see? I know Oak wanted to jump in on this. Go ahead, and then let me know, guys. And Kris, I think, wants to jump in next. And Dan, happy to jump in. I'm getting all the private chats. Go ahead, Oak.
Yeah. So I think a couple things that every person who's in a leader can do to make themselves a better leader. Number one is in the way they make decisions. In my philosophy, I have always believed that if I if I had got assigned a task or a mission or whatever you want to call it, I would walk into my subordinate leaders and I'd say, okay, guys, gals, this is what we got to do. Give me some ideas. And everybody would throw ideas out. And it was always amazing. Sometimes you'd think that the best people you thought, some of your best people you thought, well, they'd give you great ideas, and they give you some of the worst ideas in the world. And some of the people that you were kind of didn't expect anything from, they'll give you a great idea. That's the power of that, is that you get to use everybody else's experience. It's not just you. And then you just kind of say, okay, I'll use a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that and use some of mine. And then we'll come up with that decision. And that's the way I generally make decisions when I have time. Now, look, in my profession, when I was in the Army, before I retired, there were times when you couldn't do that. When people were shooting at you, you're like, okay, stop that bad man from shooting at me. Most people don't have to deal with that. Most people have the time that they can use other people's experience. And even if you don't use all of their experiences every time, just asking for their opinion gets them to buy into it. So now it's not Oak's decision or Kris's decision or plan to fix this. It's our plan to fix this. And now they've bought into it, which then takes you into the communication piece. And we can talk about that later. But I think decision-making, if you involve the people, which I think servant leaders involve the people in helping them make the decision. If you do that, I think that's taking yourself on a step to make yourself a better, more effective, and the organization a more effective and efficient organization as well.
Love that. All right. So Kris and then Dan. Go ahead, Kris.
I think, in addition to the things that Oak just mentioned, which are obviously really, really important, some easy ways that we can work on our leadership are thinking about what kind of podcasts you consume, what kind of books you consume on leadership, any courses that are available to you within your organization or outside. I mean, those are all great ways. And I think the way we should look at this is that we are all growing and learning and refining our leadership skills all the time. So I never like to think of myself as a master at anything, because number one, that's boring. And I don't think that reflects a growth mindset, but really taking, you don't have to take everything and incorporate it into your style. Be very discerning, but those things that hit home to you, try that on for size. If you hear something really interesting in a podcast you hadn't thought about, try it on, get some feedback on it, be really open to feedback, and create a style that works for you within that servant leadership mindset.
Yeah, I always tell Kris, that's great. I always tell people, look, leadership is a journey. It's not a destination. If you think you have become the master leader, you're in trouble, because none of us are. It is absolutely a journey. It is not a destination.
Yeah, I think leadership, like communication, like being a parent, you're just constantly learning, right? There's no end of the journey. The journey is the destination. You're trying to get better every single time you're at bat and trying to just get better. You're going to whiff. You know that there's going to be times when that ball is going to fly right by at but you're trying to get a better percentage on the hits there. Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say it's really about, and it's wonderful what both Kris and Oak said, because I totally agree with them, that it's about having a growth mindset, knowing that we're never finished growing. We have to keep learning. I would also add that I love the comments that Kris made about the podcast and learning from those. I would also challenge the audience to start building your professional networks outside, because too many times when we're in the corporate world, we're part of our own.
That's what I'm just gonna say. That's what we're all about on this show, growing the network.
But
so you say the right stuff, Dan.
A lot of times it's about folks are caught up in their own echo chamber, so they hear what everyone else has to say, and whether there's cynicism inside the corporation or there's optimism, we tend to follow what our leaders are saying. So sometimes it's helpful to get a fresh perspective beyond the podcasts and the books, connecting with folks, building your professional networks on LinkedIn, starting groups where you can share ideas. And obviously you want to stay away from some of the confidential information because you don't want to leak that out, but getting ideas, following other servant-minded leaders as to what's working in their companies, because you can emulate that and bring in fresh perspectives will allow individuals to position themselves with stronger leadership skills or for future leadership positions. But I think it's keeping an open mind, growth mindset, but again, expanding your professional network, because too many times we get caught up in that echo chamber.
I love that. Steve, I know you wanted to jump in.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, Dan, you're speaking our language, obviously, for sure. And you could be a leader in every aspect of your life, right? It's not just about leadership in your job, your business. It's leadership in your community, a leadership in your family, community, leadership in your spiritual background, whatever that happens to be. There's all sorts of ways you could express leadership. So leadership is an example. We spoke about that. But I agree with you. And you could really, in growing that network, you could be a leader in whatever ecosystem you're putting together, whether it be, I had at one point a mastermind group that I put together and helped lead and that team, although I looked at it as everyone that was there is a leader and I was just the one facilitating. But so one thing I want to just mention, and I was kind of on my heart to say it earlier, but that is, we were talking about mistakes and one of the things that I loved, what I think, Kris, you said it right, the having the culture of the giving people the grace to be able to make mistakes. What I found is in life, you're either winning or you're learning, right? And giving your team, giving yourself, and then giving your team the ability to be able to fail forward, right? And it's a great book, right? Fail forward, right? It's so we want to always grow and become, and it's never about that you have arrived, right? Now, Kris, I will say this: maybe I need to change the title there, Master Connector. You said you shouldn't be a master, so I got to change my title somehow, I guess. But anyway,
that's my mindset. You're good.
It's all right. Listen, I just put the title just for the fun of it, not necessarily to claim to be the master. But I do want to make one point, Cameron, before you move it on.
Yeah.
The next week, and that is, if you go into experiences in life and in business, and I mean this in business too, not just in life, with love, with grace, and with mercy, you will be amazed in what you can do in terms of being an influence, a positive influence. I think there's so many people go into world, into experiences with a jaded, it's all about me. It's all about, what can I get? What can I, and go in there with that aspect. And again, not to get spiritual, but there's certain people, we've seen the Mother Teresas of the world and the Buddhas of the world and the Christ of the world that have come with those mission of giving, right? You give, and the love, and just being a light to people around them. And that is truly how I believe the viewers can really start to move into the direction of being a true servant leadership, because that was the question, right? What advice? And again, there's really good tactical, grow a network, right? Self-development, get a lot of books in you. That's all great. And I'm not minimizing any of that, but in your heart, if you could work on your heart, you'll glow. And that's truly will be attractive, and you will change the culture of your organization, of your team, if you can be that example. So that's all I wanted to share. I'll pass it back to whoever's next, Cameron.
Dan and Oak both chomping at the bit. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, no, I wanted to provide a real world example. So I'm in the conference business, and given COVID, I should have been out of business. I should have gotten knocked out, and we pivoted quickly. But let me kind of explain how this all came to be. We've been in business 37 years, second generation family business. So it's about a community. But I've always felt, since I took over the business 20 years ago, it's about enabling others. It's not about me. It's not about the Camp IT brand. It's about enabling others. It's a fabric, and it's a community. About a year ago, someone said to me, "How are you doing with COVID? Are you all right?" And I said, "It's the happiest I've ever been." And they said, "What, are you crazy?" And I said, "No." I said, because when you're in a position, when you can enable others, you end up increasing your own happiness. And I tell folks about the trajectory of happiness. The more folks you help, you're going to find your own joy increase, and other people want to be around that. When you enable others, when you help others put food on the table, when you help others find roles, when you help someone who's maybe seriously ill find a physician, you end up making yourself indispensable to others, and you grow your network. And these are simple things that everyone can do. If you know someone's not feeling well, is there a physician I can find? Is there someone I can tap into my network? The more you help others, the more your joy scales. And what you find with that is that becomes contagious, and that contagion spreads. And my argument is really the only thing that should have been contagious this last 19 months, kindness, empathy, moving the needle forward for others. But for folks that are stuck in a rut, if you find ways just to spread goodness, to spread kindness, back to what Steve was saying, that joy is going to follow you, and you're going to find folks that are going to want to help you. Now, well, the one caveat is we shouldn't help others in a transaction mode, because we're going to get helped. You put enough good out there, you consistently move the needle forward for others, and the goodness will find you, but it shouldn't be a transaction mindset. I will say the more you do it, the happier you're going to be. I've seen it firsthand, because again, we should have been knocked out and we're not thriving.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm not sure who wants to jump in next. I think Dan had said you wanted real world. You got that in. I'll just say this, and because I think we're getting to that point, we're going to go round robin here and do some closing out points. And Kris started us off with I think is something, a great starting place to be. Dan, you're speaking our language here, but what is a great leadership book? And maybe we can close it out on that and leave some gems for folks. Great leadership book that you would recommend that people go to for some of this great servant leadership advice. I threw into the Val started off with the Bible, right? Something that I know in terms of, treating others like I want to be, treated, something I repeat to my kids every single day. We have lots of religions that hit that note. Setting the Table by Danny Meyer is one for the hospitality industry, particularly for my industry that I work in every day. And The Go-Giver, who've had Bob Berg on the show, tremendous leadership book for me. But I'm excited to hear about the rest of the folks. So I'm going to go to Steve, and then we'll go around in alphabetical order. Go Dan, and then Kris and Macc. And Kris is holding up her book. I see that. Go ahead, Steve.
Let Kris go. Let Kris go. She's her arms are going to get tired.
All right. Go ahead, Kris.
Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, one of my all-time favorites because of the emphasis on vulnerability as a strength as a leader. And I love it because there's something for everyone. It's for parents, it's for teachers, it's for leaders, it's for men, it's for women. There is literally a chapter for everyone. And in the back of the book, there is a leadership manifesto that just hits you in the feels. It is awesome. I have used that in a keynote speech once. It's so good. I highly, highly recommend it. So that is what I would say is my one go-to.
Closing remarks here, Kris. So let everybody know, in addition to connecting with you on LinkedIn, obviously, where should people go to find you?
I'm the Director of Client Services at the Achieve Institute. So achieveinst.com is where you can learn about the Achieve Institute and the work that we do.
Love it. All right. Steve, do you want to give your book here before? I know you're going to go right at the top of the hour.
And, I said it before, of John Maxwell, the book that I read recently, I think it's one of his most recent ones, John C. Maxwell, The Leader's Greatest Return. And that book impacted me more than a lot of his books are all about leadership. But that one particular book really took a deep, and of course, obviously Go-Giver, and there's a bunch of other books. But that's kind of my top right now, the Leader's Greatest Return by John Maxwell.
Thanks, Steve. All right, flying over to Mr. Dan Horwich. On mute. Let's get you off mute.
So Go-Giver, again, I mean, that extraordinary book by Bob Berg and John David Mann. Winner's Dream by Bill McDermott, one of the best business books I've read. And Excellence Wins by Horst Schulze, who was the CEO of Ritz-Carlton. All three of those highlight everything that we've been talking, and I would highly recommend everyone on this call read them.
Love that. Thank you, Dan. And Dan, where can people find you?
Well, beyond LinkedIn, you can find me if you go to itcampconferences.co. That's where you'll find me. That's our business site. But I encourage anyone or everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you have my word. I'll find ways to help you and get you included in my professional network.
I love that. All right. Going over to Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch. Close us out here.
Yeah, so I always tell people one of my favorite leadership books is Lincoln on Leadership by Donald Phillips. And I think that's a great book that I go back to on occasion. But I also, the other book that I always like, and some would argue maybe it's not a leadership book, but I would argue with them, is, and of course, the loss of General Colin Powell today is huge when we start talking about leaders. What an amazing leader. Probably the most impressive man I ever met in real life. And I always loved his book. and I've read it several times, My American Journey. And I would encourage anybody who wants to learn about selfless service and servant leadership to read General Powell's book, because he certainly was a servant leader.
I know you're a humble man, Oakland, but you have a book too that you just put out. Would you want to just flash the cover of that book there, sir?
Yeah, I think I got it right here.
All right.
Yeah, I got it right here. It's called Your Leadership Legacy: Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be, and you can get it on Amazon. But you can link up with me on LinkedIn like everybody else, or I do have a website. It's called it's at www.ltcoakmcculloch.com, and it's my website, and my business is called Your Leadership Legacy.
Love it. Yeah, no, I'm excited. I wrote down, I got a lot of reading here to get done. It's going to be a wild ride getting through some of these books, because a lot of these I haven't read, so I'm excited to jump into them. Steve, close us out. You're on mute.
There we go. It had to happen one time.
There we go.
There we go. All right. Well, yeah, this has been tremendous. And so, Cameron, I was talking to people. We're at one point, we may want to shrink the show down to 30 minutes, but when there's so much great people on this, like we had today, and we've had on many of our weeks, I can't imagine this being a 30-minute show. It's just, there's so much great content. I feel like we'd be gypping the audience if we did, only, cut it down to 30 minutes. But this has been tremendous. And hopefully, people watching this on the replay, like Cameron said, make sure #replay. If you're watching it and you're going to comment, we want to know that you watched it. Hopefully, if you have watched this show, share it out to your network. I think there's a great message here that we need to, that really needs to get penetrated across the world. So hopefully more people are going to get this message, and definitely recommend you connect with Dan, with Oakland and Kris for sure. And it's tremendous. So we're gonna end up. Obviously this has been a phenomenal broadcast, and we're next week. We have an incredible topic for you coming at you this next week, which is going to be taking the leap, the entrepreneurial mindset. And we're going to have Bridget Hom, Krista Molian, and Ben Stein, and it's going to be an incredible conversation. So if you've been kind of thinking about, I do want to take a leap and maybe get out there and do take some entrepreneurial jump, it's going to be a great conversation. And even though, listen, there's entrepreneurs, and then there's also intrapreneurs. I've heard that term. Tina Campbell, I've heard her say that intrapreneur being, you've got that entrepreneurial mindset within your company. So it doesn't mean you have to start a job of your own, a company of your own. You could be using that entrepreneurial mindset inside of the organization you're a part of. Even could be the military, right? Right, Oakland. So just having that mindset, although there's probably some parameters you got to stay tight within. But anyway, this has been great. Really appreciate everybody. Cameron, as usual, thank you for doing all that you do behind the scenes, and
thank you, Steve,
being the Wizard of Oz there. And so we're gonna end it up with Crush It, and gonna send the audience out. And since we're ending at 2, I could lead this, Cameron. I know my wife has to be on a call at 2 sharp. So, but we just want to be the light to you guys, to the viewers. So hopefully this has inspired you and uplifted you. So we want to send you out and go out in there in the world and just go ahead and crush it. So here we go now. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Crush
it! Have an amazing week, everybody. We are back next week, taking the leap, the entrepreneurial mindset with Bridget Hom, Krista Mullen. We are going to do it. We are so thankful for you, our audience. You make this show possible. You make this show great. Thank you so much for all you do, your input, your participation. Please connect with our expert panelists today. We loved doing this. We are going to rock out. Thank you so much. The content is gourmet. Love it. You all are changing lives. Val Torres says, thank you so much, and we will see you next week. LinkedIn, we are going to fire up your Monday
with Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
I am Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
Over the next hour of this Master Connection series, we will take a deep dive into the different ways to connect and network effectively.
see us and hear us right now. So LinkedIn, we are on here. We're getting ready.
Hear from experts along with Steve Spiro, who went from being shy and introverted to the master connector.